You're listening to the weekly Parsha Podcast with Ari Goldwag, recorded with Hashem's never-ending assistance in Ramat Pishim, Israel 5784, 2024. This week's Parsha is Parsha Devarim. It's the Parsha that we always read right before Tisha B'Av. And I'd like to share with you a thought from the Parsha, from the Medrash, as it relates to Geula, redemption. We spoke, Baruch Hashem, in the Moshiach podcast, a lot about where we are. I suggest going in and listening to that if you haven't heard it yet. And I'd like to share with you what the Medrash says on the Psukim. So Moshe Rabenu gets up to speak in front of the Jewish people. The Jewish people are about to enter the land of Israel. The moment has finally arrived for us to come in, to take out all of the 7 nations that were here, and to distribute the land amongst the different tribes. And Moshe knows that he's not going to go in there with them. He's not going to lead them in. But he speaks to them. He starts, I believe, Rosh Chodesh Shvat it was, 5 weeks before he was to pass away. And he says to them like this. This is in chapter 1, verses 8 through 10 of Deuteronomy, of Devarim. Behold, I have given to you, I have placed in front of you this land. Come and inherit the land. That God swore that he would give to your forefathers, to their offspring. Avraham, that he would give it to them and to their children after them. And I said to you, so Moshe Rabenu says something which it sounds like it's negative, but we're going to see the positive side of it. He says, I told you at that time that I can't possibly carry you all on my own. Says the verse 10, Hashem has made you very great. Hashem has multiplied you. And you today are like the stars of the heaven. Stars of the heavens. So numerous. I'm going to read 2 more verses actually. Hashem, the God of your forefathers, should add unto you, multiply you 1,000 times. And he should bless you as he spoke to you. Interestingly, there's one more pasuk which sounds negative. He says, how can I carry you all? How can I carry the tremendous load of all of your questions and all of your fights? That's what Moshe Rabenu says. And classically we read Eicha, we read it, he says, how can I carry you? We read it with the tune of Eicha, which is a sad tune, but as we'll see, this actually is an incredibly joyous and positive message that Moshe Rabenu was giving them about the fact that they had grown so great and so numerous to the point where he couldn't carry them. We'll see, can he carry them? Can he not carry them? Let's see what the Medrash says. We have, the pasuk says, Hashem, your God, has made you very great, very numerous. The pasuk says, and it's a pasuk in Tehillim, chapter 138, it says, I will bow down to the sanctuary of your holiness. The end of the pasuk says, because you have done much greater than your name and your word. So we're going to see an amazing thing. And that amazing thing has to do with the fact that Hashem makes promises. He says things. He says he's going to do things. But just like our sages teach us that the way of a tzaddik, the righteous individual, their way is to say a little bit and to do a lot. Avraham Avinu says, come, I'll give you a little food, but he gives them like a whole meal. He gives the angels a whole meal. He didn't know they were angels. Hashem also, he says he's going to do a little bit. But the way that Hashem's word manifests is much greater, much more blessings. That's the way of Hashem. Rabbi Eloi, B'Shem Rabbi Yossi ben Zimra. Rabbi Eloi said And we're going to have a few statements in the name of Rabbi Eloi, in the name of Rabbi Yossi ben Zimri. Kach amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu Avraham. This is what God said to Avraham. She'yigol es bano b'shtei osiyos. Hashem said He's going to redeem His children with 2 letters. What are the 2 letters? Mina en shekach ksiv v'gam es hagoy asher yavodu don anochi. Hashem says that the Jewish people are going to have to go through a terrible gullus and exile. They're going to be slaves in Egypt. They're going to have difficult times. They're going to be treated terribly. But then, after, when it's time for their redemption, Hashem promises, I'm going to judge them. I'm going to judge the nation that has enslaved them. Don anochi. The word don is 2 letters. God says, I will judge them. Don anochi. 2 letters. When Hashem actually comes to redeem the Jewish people, He doesn't just judge them with 2 letters, meaning judge the Egyptians with 2 letters and redeem us with 2 letters. But rather, He redeems us with 72 letters. Don't know what the idea here is, but the foundation here is that Hashem says a little, I'm going to judge them. When it comes to the actual manifestation of it, when it comes to the actual redemption, there's a much larger manifestation of it. It's expanded. It's not just 2 letters. It's 72 letters. And before Hashem talk about what is the idea of the 72 letters, what is the 72 letter name of Hashem, it comes from there's psukim that talk about right by Kriyas Yamsuf, right before the sea was split. So the encampment of the Jewish people, there was an encampment of the Jewish people and there was an encampment of the Egyptians, and in between were the Ananei HaKavod, the clouds of God's glory, and a pillar of fire to protect the Jewish people and separate between the Jews and the Egyptians. So that protection, if you look at those 3 psukim, so the 3 psukim, each of the 3 psukim have 72 letters each. Three verses in a row have exactly 72 letters, and you take the first letter of the first pasuk, the last letter of the second pasuk, the first letter of the third pasuk, and that's Vav, Hey, Vav, and that's the first set of 72 letters. The first set of 3 letters, there are 72 sets. Take the second letter of the first pasuk, the second to last letter of the second pasuk, and the second letter of the third pasuk, and that's how we get the names Ani V'Hoi, which we say on Sukkot, Ani V'Hoi Hoshiana. Those are 2 names out of those 72 3-letter names. But Hashem, instead of only redeeming us with 2 letters, He redeems us with 72 letters. And even those 72 letters are really 72 times 3. How do we get this? Also, if you look at the verse where Hashem actually takes us, have you ever seen, the pasuk says, have you ever seen that Hashem attempted to take out one nation from another nation? If you count the letters in that pasuk as well, you have to subtract one of the words goy, to subtract the word goy, one nation out of another nation. So one time it says goy, it's referring to the Jewish nation. One time it's referring to the Egyptian nation. You take out the word goy, count the letters, starting from the word Lovoi, mi lovoi lakachas legoy, you'll see it's 72 letters. But the point here, again, the bottom line is, it's all very interesting. I'm not going to get so involved in what is the idea of the 72-letter name of Hashem. It's a name that has to do with separating between the Jews and the Egyptians, like we mentioned. It has to do with us being special and unique. It has to do with Hashem's Ananei HaKavod, His protection. It has to do with the pillar of fire, the light that He shines through us. We'll talk about the Eish, hopefully we'll get to it. But the idea is that Hashem makes a small promise, so to speak, and he shows up big. He does it all the way. He doesn't just redeem us with 2 letters. He redeems us with 72, or 72 times 3, 216. Davar acher. Okay, so that's the first example. When Hashem does it, it looks like it's going to be small, but it's going to be huge. Bilai says, B'Shem Rabbi Yossi ben Zimri, Mipnei ma lo igila Kadosh Baruch Hu la'Avraham Avinu she'itin lebanav es Hamon. Why did Hashem not reveal to Avraham Avinu that He's going to eventually provide sustenance to the Jewish people for 40 years in the wilderness with the man, with the manna, the special, amazing spiritual bread. Hashem did not reveal that to Avraham Avinu. Hashem is showing us that His way is like the tzaddik, like the righteous, that He says a little bit, but He does a lot. Meaning He told Avraham that the Jewish people would come out and they would be saved and they would be redeemed, but He didn't tell him about all the details and the manifestation of ribui. Right, that's what we're talking about here. Remember, Hashem lekechem yirba eschem. That's how this whole conversation starts. Hashem, your God, has made you great, has made you numerous. And Hashem, that's how Hashem does things. And that has to do with spirituality. When it comes to redemption and spirituality, there's a huge expansion. It's almost something I would say it's something that you can't even express, really. You can't even talk about it. Hashem couldn't say to him in the reality where he was, he couldn't say to him how it's going to be in the state of redemption. We can't understand what it's going to look like when Moshiach comes, when the Messiah arrives. What will the world be like? What does it mean to have a Beis Hamikdash? We don't know exactly what that means. We don't know almost at all what it means, right? Forget about exactly. But this I can tell you, whatever you think it is, it's so much greater. And whatever the greater is, it's even greater. Okay. That's the second example, is the man, that Hashem didn't tell him that He was going to give the Jewish people the man. Davar acher, another aspect. Here's where we come back to our verse. The pasuk says, Hashem says that He's going to make Avraham Avinu's children numerous like the stars. So, as numerous as the stars means precisely as much as the stars. Maybe as the amount of stars that you can see, as the visible stars. When it comes to how many were the Jewish people, they were and they're going to be 1,000 times the amount that we were. We were 600,000 Jews who came out of Egypt to win into the land of Israel. So it's going to be 1,000 times that. There's going to be 600 million Jews. Okay, we're going to expand like beyond imagination. It's very interesting. So Moshe Rabenu is saying that the Jewish people are such a huge amount of people. For one person to carry all of that, it's just not possible. So it sounds like a little bit of a negative thing, but really what we're seeing is that it's a huge demonstration of Hashem's blessing, that the Jewish people are so many. This is what redemption looks like. Dovid Hamelech describes a similar issue that Moshe Rabenu describes, we could say. But it's very interesting, the resolution in regards to Dovid Hamelech, to falteni me rive to simeni. The pasuk says in Tehillim in chapter 18, verse 44, David says, help me get away from the fights of the nation. So in this pasuk in Tehillim, it says from the nation. But there's a similar verse that says in Shmuel, in Tanakh, where it says, Ami. Get me out of the fights of my nation. So why did the Psukim have the two different ways of saying it's the same exact concept, but once it says the nation, once it says my nation. King David says, get me out of the fights of my nation. I don't want to have any interactions with the Jewish people where I'm upset at them and I judge them and I call them to judgment, so to speak. And I don't want them to have any tainas on me. I don't want them to have any situations. I don't want any kind of situations where the Jewish people feel that I have perhaps misjudged them or something is wrong with our relationship. He's begging Hashem. He's begging Hashem that their relationship just be smooth and good, and it not be necessary for there to be any kind of judgments between them. Amalech HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Dovid, ma ata yoshev lecha etzlon chayecha kfar minisi oischa melech aleim. So Hashem says to David Hamelech, you don't have to be worried about there being any kind, this is very interesting, you don't have to be worried about there being any kind of disagreements between you and the nation. Now, listen to this carefully, because it sounds very interesting, it sounds like a funny thing. But he says, you're the king. You're going to be the king over the Jewish people, and because of that, they will listen to whatever you say. So you're not going to have any issues of discord between you and the Jewish people. So David says, since that's the case, you're making me the king over the Jewish people, I ask you please that you give them the heart to hear what I have to say. That's the next pasuk. It's Tehillim, chapter 18, verse 45. It says that please let them be able to hear what I have to say. Let them be able to hear what I have to say. Okay, so, but what is it really saying? What's really going on here is that it's saying that when I become a king, when David Hamelech becomes a king, when King David is the king over the Jewish people, it means that he is the heart, really, the director, the conscience of the Jewish people. It's very interesting, our sages say that when King David said, Yodai damim milei, my hands were filled with blood. So it means that they would come and ask him their shilas. They had questions that had to do with blood. Halachas of Hilchas Nida. They had questions to ask him, and he would be the Paisik. He was a Paisik Hadar. He knew all of the Torah. He was the halachic decider of the time. They would ask him questions. Now, what are the sages teaching us with that? They're teaching us this idea that David Hamelech is the conscience of the Jewish people. He helps them to see what is Hashem's will. And so there's a prayer. There's a prayer that he's saying, and that is that let us be aligned in such a way that that we don't get in fights, that the heart and the mind don't get in fights, that we're aligned, we're ready to do what we need to do, and there's no resistance to that. David to see many l'resh goyim. Amar brechia im dantas hagoy bohu u'maisercha lelika umihu Elohei Elohim haroya ve'ena nira. David Hamelech was nervous about being a judge over the Jewish people because he knew that the Jewish people have a certain power, that if he will say a certain judgment that they don't like and they complain to God, as it were, God will hear their prayer. God will, if the person who comes out of the judgment is upset and says something negative about the judge and prays to Hashem that something negative should happen to the judge, heaven forbid, so David was concerned that that prayer would be heard. Hashem The Medrash says that David and Moshe had the same concern. And within the concern, what seems to be negative is something very positive. He's like, Moshe Rabenu and David Hamelech, King David, they were the kings of the Jewish people, so to speak. David was, and Moshe, so to speak, he was the leader. They knew that Hashem had blessed the Jewish people. He had blessed them with numbers. He blessed them with the power of prayer. He blessed them with protection. And because of that, those who would judge them could be put in danger. So David and Moshe asked, they said a tefillah, they said a prayer to God, please help us, that they should accept and hear the judgments and the directions that we give, and that the power that they have as a result, as we'll see shortly, of being the vehicles for your light, Hashem, let that power not be misused. And just obviously in this point, it's important to understand that, as the Pasuk says to Avraham Avinu, those who bless the Jewish people are blessed. Those who curse the Jewish people are cursed. And we have a power. And the nations of the world need to watch out. Right? They need to watch out. The next piece in the Medrash adds another aspect, another level to this. And it says, Hashem lekechem yibaskum ve'inechem hayom ke'choichvei, etc. V'amar lehen hayom atem ke'kechovim v'alas lavoi l'roif. The Medrash says something amazing, which is very similar in concept to what we said previously in the Bitachon podcast and in the Moshiach podcast. And this has to do with, you today are like the stars. The Jewish people were blessed to be like the stars, but they were also blessed, which means to be numerous and to be many, or to be great. Says the Medrash, the Medrash says it, don't just read it lo roiv, which can mean to be many or great, but read it to as larav. You're going to be like your master, like your teacher. Who is the teacher? Hashem is our teacher. Hashem is our master. You're going to be like God. You're going to be godly. We find that the verse says about Hashem, that God, Hashem, your God, is like a consuming fire. The Pasuk says in Isaiah chapter 10, verse 17, about the Jewish people in the future, the light of the people of Israel will be like fire. The holiness and their Holy One, not sure exactly what the Kedush L'Lava means, might be referring to Hashem or might be referring to the Jewish people. Check out the verse, we got to find out. But the Jewish people are likened to fire and to lehava. So another word for fire. So in the future time, the Jewish people, there's a certain aspect of us being like stars. Stars are small, they shine, but they're very small. But then there's a huge light. We, in the future time when Moshiach arrives, we will reflect the light of Hashem completely. Rabenu Bar Chama says, I'll show you another example of this, where we find this in the other direction. When it comes to someone who worships idols, so that person is considered like the idol itself. Pasuk says in Tehillim, in Psalm chapter 115, verse 8, those who make idols will be like the idols. The idols will be destroyed, and those people will be destroyed. The things that we make into our idols and our goals, if a person makes his goal to be Mahu Rachum Afatarachum, just like God is compassionate, so too I want to be compassionate. If we aim to emulate Hashem, to emulate God, so then we become like our God. But those who aim to emulate an idol, that's their goal. So then, they end up like their idol, they end up destroyed. But one who wants to be like Hashem, certainly we're going to end up to be like Hashem, shining incredible light. Minayin, how do we know this? Shekach Siv. We have a pasuk. Baruch HaGever sheyiftach b'Hashem v'goymer v'hoya Hashem yiftach. Very interesting. Pasuk says, blessed is the one who trusts in God. Hashem will be his trust. I think the Medrash is saying, I think that the diuk is Baruch HaGever. The one, it could have just said in the verse, the one who trusts in Hashem, so Hashem is his trust. If you trust in Hashem, so it's gonna work. But it says Baruch HaGever, blessed is the one who trusts in Hashem, which I think is coming to say, that's the concept that we're talking about here, is there's in the word bracha, which means blessing, that means there's an expansion. In a natural way, it should be a certain thing, right? Every year of the 6-year cycle, so you make a certain amount of, you produce a certain amount of produce. But Hashem promises that if you're going to keep Shemitah, there's going to be triple crops in the 6th year, enough for the 6th and the 7th and the 8th year. So the concept of Baruch means an expansion beyond the natural. When a person trusts in Hashem, that means that he's making his relationship with Hashem paramount. He wants to be connected to God. He wants to be like Hashem. So he becomes blessed. He experiences expansion. Just like Hashem is the ultimate expansion. Hashem is inside of the reality that we exist within, but he's also completely surrounding the reality. That's exactly, or in a parallel way, our souls do that as well. They're inside of our body, but they're also surrounding our body. Rabbi Abba, last point. Rabbi Abba says, in the future, here's another aspect of how great the potential of the Jewish people is. And actually, we're going to see it's not just in potential for the future time, but you can access it right now, even before Moshiach has arrived. The place where the tzaddikim, the righteous individuals, will be in the future is going to be higher than the place of the Malachi Asharis, the angels. And the angels will ask the righteous, what new concept, what new laws, what new spiritual ideas did Hashem introduce to you today? We can't get in there and find out. Rabbi Levi Bar Chanina says, Al Titama, don't be in wonder about this. Because even in this world, those who study Torah, those who are righteous, those who are striving to be connected to Hashem, to be like Hashem, to do His will, they're already higher than the angels themselves. It's a pasuk in Daniel, chapter 3, verse 5, and it speaks about the fact that these particular righteous individuals were on a higher level. They were on a higher level, according to different girsa, mechabshin lefanav es haor. They were able to walk on coals. They were on a higher level. The righteous were on a higher level than the angels themselves. Interesting, they're able to walk on coals. That means that they can handle the incredible light that Hashem has. They can handle the incredible light that Hashem wants to bring into the world, the light of His goodness. The Jewish people are promised. This is a promise within the Eicha, within the moment of darkness, where Moshe says, how can I carry you? But there's a blessing that the Jewish people, when we get to the other side of Geula redemption, and we had it really all along, there's an incredible light that we're meant to shine. And I would say that when we're not properly shining the light, so then the light can burn us. And that's how we end up in exile. That's how we end up in trouble. But ultimately, that light is going to shine. We are meant to experience incredible expansion and blessings. That's who we are. That's the essence of who the Jewish people are. We're meant to shine that light out into the world. I want to bless you. I ask you to bless me. Hashem should help us to recognize the amazing future that awaits us and help us to realize that we can access that future now. All we need to do is try to emulate Hashem, try to connect to Hashem, and try to keep His Torah, to be righteous, to be tzaddikim. And in so doing, we will merit incredible blessings, we'll merit incredible expansion now and on into the future. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful Shabbos. This podcast was made possible through the gracious donations of listeners like you. For more podcasts like this, please visit www.arigoldwag.com or search on iTunes Ari Goldwag.